This episode is sponsored by Northeast Ford and Catskill View Weddings. Hey Mary, how's it going?
It's going great. I'm looking forward to our guest today, who is
Ned Sullivan. He's our third Zoom interview. And Ned is someone that is a family friend. But besides that, I am so honored to know Ned and all of his work for not just the Hudson Valley or the Northeast in general, but for the environment as a whole on a global level. Ned's resume reads like OMG. You can check it out in the show notes. But Ned, to me, his dedication and love of the outdoors is something that resonates from his childhood through all of his work career and through his credentials and all the topics and issues that he has tackled with both being the head of Scenic Hudson today and his work just in general.
I am interested in Ned's ability, and I'm hoping he'll talk about this, to get players to the table to accomplish some really amazing David and Goliath goals through Scenic Hudson. Yeah. So he's got a team of people, I imagine, working with him and accomplishing what he's accomplished. I'm also interested to find out about this Northeast Carbon Alliance, which is a consortium around the topic of climate change in this area, and it having to do with the land, wetland, forest, farmland. Mm-hmm. So I'm very interested about that. And I'm also interested to hear about his transition from banking to government to nonprofit executive. So he's going to have a lot to say to us, I have a feeling.
There's so much to Ned, and I think that our listeners won't mind that we jump back and forth a little bit on this because everything is just so connected. But overall, it's about the environment and Ned's dedication to it, as well as the communities that he's working with and for. And you said bring people to the table, and that doesn't mean just organizations, the heads of them, but it means the local people who reside in the communities that he's trying to impact. So enjoy Ned Sullivan. Northeast Ford offers great sales and service, including a no-charge pickup and delivery for any service, even with oil changes. And they offer 2-year unlimited oil changes with any vehicle purchase, new or pre-owned.
Northeast Ford makes buying, selling, or trading in your car super easy. They have charging stations for your electric vehicle and a ready cash now offer and vehicle check on the spot if you wish to sell your vehicle. And they provide help with all the paperwork.
They service 6 counties, and they are located at 182 Route 44 in Millerton, where you can swing by and see Lan and his great sales team.
Or visit them online at www.northeastfordmillerton.com.
Our next sponsor is someone that I have a personal connection with. Catskill View Weddings and Event is where I got married. Mary, you were one of our guests.
I was one of your guests, and I have to tell you, you making your grand entrance on the crest of the hill during sunset was pretty dramatic.
On horseback, too?
On horseback, and I nudged my husband and said, why didn't we do this?
Well, it is, we made some beautiful photos that are on the website that Catskill View uses, and there have been some other beautiful, beautiful weddings there, but the selling point is definitely the view. It is a 360-degree unobstructed view of the Catskill Mountain Range. Sometimes you can see the Ashwaubenon down in New Paltz all the way up to Albany. But the sunset there is spectacular, and we were so lucky when we got married in October with the foliage and the sun, and almost all of our friends and family's profile pictures for the next 6 months were with the sunset and the view. And to learn more, please visit www.catskillviewweddings.com.
And by the way, Thorin is still married.
Yes. Hey, Ned, welcome to Mainstream Moxie, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Thorin. I'm thrilled to be here.
What we always start by is asking our guests to define Moxie and how they view it so that we can then kind of move on to your Moxie.
Okay, well, I think my definition of Moxie is to dare greatly and to have the courage of your convictions to put yourself out there and make it happen.
I like that. Make it happen. It seems to be a thread with a lot of our guests. I would like to read something that we actually had in Mainstream Magazine to start us off and start our listeners off to put in perspective why we asked you to come on the show here. And it has to go with your experience, which is over 40 years that started with the fisheries research for the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. You developed marketing materials for liquor manufacture in the French Alps. You have graduate degrees from both the Yale School of Management and the School of Forestry and Environmental Studies, and masters in public. And I'll go on and on and on. We'll put this in the show notes, but then you were in banking, and now you are the head of Scenic Hudson. How have you found your Moxie throughout your career, both from your education as well as in your professional career?
Well, my mind immediately goes to an expedition that I participated in, a 50-day expedition to climb what was then known as Mount McKinley. It's now known as Denali, the highest mountain in North America. And my teammates were just friends and colleagues, and we didn't have a guide. It was more or less a winter expedition, and we skied 100 miles to the base of the mountain. We had a dog sled taking our gear to base camp, and then we spent about a month moving our gear up the mountain and attempting to make it to the summit. So, that was an example of daring greatly and trying to make it happen.
I'd say.
It was probably one of the greatest challenges of my life. And we made it to the high camp. We were a day hike away from the summit when one of the members of our team got pulmonary edema.
Oh, dear.
A potentially fatal sickness from the altitude. And the Moxie was to get him safely off the mountain.
Right.
We had to change the whole goal of our expedition from making that final attempt on the summit to coming together and making sure that the safety of our friend and colleague and team member was protected, and that we were able to get him off the mountain safely. And we had a heck of an experience. And
I can only imagine.
But it's setting that goal that maybe just beyond your capacity, your capabilities. I think we would have made it if it hadn't been for a member of our team getting sick. But we were that close. A simple day hike. We were in a snow cave that we'd had to build because there were 150-mile-an-hour winds. And
oh my gosh.
But I know we could have done it, but sometimes you have to change your goal and then again show the same kind of moxie in achieving a different goal, getting everybody safely down the mountain. That became a new goal, and we achieved that.
I'm interested in the natural world as a tool to create Moxie. I'm sure that you discovered a lot about yourself and about your friends during that time, like strengths, weaknesses, who you could depend on for certain things and who you couldn't, what you could depend upon yourself for. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the power of the natural world to create that kind of thinking and acting in a person's life.
Yeah, that's a great question, Mary. And my first engagement with the outdoors, the natural world, was through an outward bound type program that I participated in high school, first as a student and then as an instructor. And it was all about putting young people in challenging circumstance and helping guide them to emerge as leaders and to work as team members. So whether it was a ropes course and getting everybody over a wall, 12-foot wall, or zip lines and rappelling and whitewater canoeing and ultimately kayaking, all those things required each individual to look inside him or herself and to see what their strengths are and what scares them.
Right.
When they're vulnerable and willing to rely on a team member, a teammate, when they feel strong enough to lead, but also humble enough and equally committed to a shared goal to rely on somebody else.
Right,
So
right.
those are the kinds of things that we did back in those days to get young people to think about their role in nature, but also their role as a member of a team. And I think those lessons have carried me through my entire life and career.
I could say that about being a waitress.
Okay.
Anyway,
I've had a lot. I've had a lot of jobs, a lot of different jobs in my life, but that is not one of them. So maybe it's not too late.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
But has that always been a theme, if you will, throughout your career? Certainly looking at your resume, it seems that collaboration spirit with coworkers and other organizations, as well as nature, has always been in some way, maybe, well, I guess in the banking, part of your life too, but has that been a conscious decision, direction, or has it just, happened to be coming together like that?
It's been very conscious. I
Okay.
love the outdoors. It's my cathedral, my place where I feel closest to the spiritual world, an opportunity to feel that power, feel that inspiration.
Mhm.
And that has, in fact, motivated and shaped my entire professional career, as well as how I spend my time when I'm not working, and that is out cross-country skiing or bicycling or hiking in nature, and either on my own or with friends and colleagues.
Mm. What have been some of your most, I guess, biggest challenges? Has it been some of the challenges you have taken on with Scenic Hudson, or prior to that with your work in Boston, cleaning up the harbor there?
Yeah, so you mentioned that I spent some time in banking,
Yes.
and I worked at Bank of Boston, and turns out that was something I never could have imagined myself doing,
Mm.
of my love of the outdoors. And I imagined myself, I went back to grad school and I thought in forestry as well as management. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll be a backcountry ranger, which I was earlier in my career. And, that would be great, living living in the wilderness and helping develop management plans for large areas. But it turned out that I was able to really move the needle working for Bank of Boston, because early in my time in public finance, I was asked by the president of the bank to help him develop a financial plan to clean up Boston Harbor.
Oh, wow.
Boston Harbor was at the time one of the most polluted harbors in the nation.
Oh my goodness. What year was that?
It was 82.
Okay.
And for some reason, Massachusetts hadn't gotten all the federal money that was available to states around the country and municipalities to build the sewage treatment capacity,
Hmm.
and that would clean up a harbor like Boston Harbor. They were sued, and a court master directed them to hire a financial advisor to develop a financing plan to clean up the harbor. And so that was a job that fell to me.
Hmm.
And so it was very exciting to be in an organization like that and have the opportunity to work with the governor and the commissioner of finance and commissioner of the environment, and to devise this plan that would enable Boston to take the water and wastewater systems for, I think it was about 43 communities, including the city of Boston, create a whole new organization called the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority that would then become responsible for cleaning up the harbor and ensuring safe and clean drinking water for the entire Boston metropolitan area, Greater Boston. So
Wow.
that was really, just a wonderful early experience in my professional career that brought together my education in finance, but also in the natural world.
And you brought those skills to bear at Scenic Hudson. In an interview you did for Main Street, you talked about one of the skills that nonprofits are challenged by is having that financial and administrative piece to go along with the passion of the cause. And I think that's a really powerful combination when you can bring those strengths to the table for a nonprofit like Scenic Hudson. So I'm interested in we're going to jump around a lot if that's okay, because we have a lot of questions for you. You seem to have a model of Moxie that involves high levels of collaboration with individuals and organizations and the government to achieve an end. And I'm wondering how you're able to enlist collaborators. I have this philosophy that you have to pitch things in a certain way where people can identify their self-interest somehow in what you're trying to do. And how do you go about trying to shape your arguments towards the different parties that you're trying to enlist help from?
That's a great question, Mary. And I will say, back to the kind of Scenic Hudson model where both finance and understanding of the natural world are critical. And but I have to say, I rely on an incredibly capable staff of people who are equally dedicated and bring to bear, like my chief financial officer, Jason Camparisi, he brings to bear that knowledge of finance, and then Seth McKee, who runs our land trust, he brings that knowledge of real estate transactions, and people who are working in our river cities who are bringing that knowledge to bear. So we've got a lot of different folks who are doing great work, and so that and we all have that shared passion for the work, and so within the organization, that spirit of collaboration is equally important. I think you were trying to talk about outside the organization, and again, I think of the head of our River Cities program, Zoraida Lopez Diago, and how she is working in the cities of the Hudson Valley to bring together community members, maybe the Dutchess County in Poughkeepsie, around the idea of creating an urban trail.
Mm-hmm.
And Scenic Hudson actually purchased a former CSX rail spur, a former railroad track that runs through the city. And we had the idea of turning it into a rail trail through the north side of Poughkeepsie, which is one of the most economically challenged areas that have been redlined in the past, where people have not had access to resources and business opportunities and home loans, mortgages, and everything. And we're trying to address that now. And the idea is, okay, Scenic Hudson can bring the resources to buy that rail spur from CSX, but then we work with Dutchess County, and Dutchess County actually takes ownership of it, and they take responsibility for making the improvements on the rail trail. But then we have to go to them and say, hey, this is great. This is going to tie into Walkway Over the Hudson,
right?
The beautiful trail across the river on a former railroad bridge. And they're excited about that, but we want to make sure that the project is going to be welcoming to the neighborhoods through which it passes, and that the people who don't have cars and don't have a way to get to the grocery store safely and quickly, so that they can get their fresh food and everything. Let's turn this into a way for them to access those resources, whether it's their school or a ball field or a community garden that we're also helping to. So it's a staff that shares a commitment and a passion, but then going out into the community, working with Dutchess County, working with the residents. How do we empower them to raise their voices to get what they would like? And our goal is always, when we go into these communities, listen first, listen to what their goals are, and then how can we bring our scenic Hudson capabilities to bear in achieving those goals.
I'm interested in going back to your outward boundy experience when you talked about kind of immersing yourself or exposing yourself to what scares you. So fast forward to the Ned Sullivan of today. What scares you?
Well, what really scares me is climate change, an issue that should scare everybody
Right.
because it's global. It's going to affect my daughter's lives, our grandson out on the West Coast, but it's here and now. It's the ice storm we just experienced. It's droughts, it's wildfires, all those things. But it doesn't seem to be, what scares me is that people are not responding. They are not recognizing that the survival of the planet and of our communities and of our survival is at risk here. And so we are working at Scenic Hudson to empower people and motivate people to work to protect the environment, to stop the carbon emissions and methane emissions that are driving this, and even reverse them with some of the strategies that we're working on.
What are some of the things that you see? I mean, you guys work from Yonkers to Maine. If we look at the trajectory of, since at least you took on the cement plant that could have impacted Maine, what does Scenic Hudson see as an impact locally in the Hudson Valley region and beyond that is happening, that has changed due to climate change? Just to put it, to really hammer it home for the citizens, at least, for our listeners who live in the Hudson Valley, and then who can resonate, going further abroad with that.
Well, what are the things that are causing this that we can change, or what?
Both. What are some of the effects that you see
Okay.
in the Hudson Valley region that Scenic Hudson sees, and then what are some of the solutions that we could all contribute to, or that Scenic Hudson is suggesting can happen or should happen?
So sea level is rising more rapidly than ever along the Hudson. We are having to design waterfront parks and trails for very significant increases in sea level rise. Storm surges are causing significant damage. And so we're having to change the way we design our parks. We're seeing the seasons change. My passion is cross-country skiing, and you can't rely on a good winter snowpack anymore. Whether you're a downhill skier or a cross-country skier, I'm having to go farther and farther afield to find the beautiful trails that would enable me to enjoy that winter sport, and that would be such an important part of the economy of our region, for the ski areas, for the hotels and inns and restaurants that support it. So, and the seasons are changing for the farmers.
Yes.
And maple sugar tappers. So it's very hard to predict what's going to happen, and when there might be frost, when harvest is going to be, what kind of a mud season there's going to be. There might be multiple mud seasons now. So anyway, these are things that are affecting people today. For a long time, environmentalists were kind of accused of being Chicken Little, the sky is falling. And people said, oh, the environmental community was not successful at getting people to focus on climate change because they were being hysterical. Well, the things that Al Gore shared with us in An Inconvenient Truth, they've all come true. So what we need to do now is implement the law that has been adopted in New York State, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, that is helping us to make a shift to dramatically reduce carbon emissions and to shift to renewable energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are currently opposing a power plant that is proposed for the Newburgh waterfront in Orange County. It's called Dan Scammer. And it's a fossil fuel, fracked gas, and it runs completely counter to the law that has been adopted that basically says we have to phase out power derived from fossil fuels.
Right.
Or would we build a brand new one when we're looking to phase it out. So we're opposing that, and we're very excited that Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Conservation, Basil Sagos, denied the power plant a critical air permit that is required before they could begin construction.
Oh, wow.
So the promoters of the project are appealing that, and we will be working side by side with New York State to defend the decision to deny that air permit, because it was denied because the plant cannot comply with this new climate law that is now in effect. So that's just one example of things that we can do, but there are other things, particularly in the realm of agriculture. Farming, conventional farming, releases greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. So it's a driver of climate change. But if the practices are modified, then farming can actually take carbon out of the atmosphere and fix it in the soil and in the roots and reverse climate change.
Is that the regenerative agriculture?
Exactly, yes.
Is regenerative mean that it stores carbon or it replenishes the soil as it goes along? What does that mean?
Yes, yes to both those.
Oh, okay. Yay!
Yes, so these are practices that fix the carbon in the soil, sequester it there, and make the soil healthier. So it has the additional advantage, in addition to being a deterrent to climate change, it makes the soils more productive, healthier, and the science indicates it will make the yields greater. So hopefully farming will be more productive and more profitable. We want our farmers to survive and thrive.
Yes.
And so we're now working with the soil and water conservation districts, the New York State Department of Agriculture, and Governor Hochul has recently signed soil health legislation.
Oh, wow.
That is going to strengthen the state's programs that support farmers that are implementing these practices.
And you also work with wetlands and forests in that regard. I spent a year and a half working at Great Mountain Forest in Norfolk, and got schooled quite quickly in the work that wetlands do and that trees do in our environment. And I'm wondering what kind of work you're doing in those realms.
Well, we've created an organization, Mary. It's actually within Scenic Hudson, but involves organizations from all over the Northeast. It's called the Northeast Carbon Alliance. And the purpose is to share information and advance the implementation of regenerative practices from mountaintop to ocean floor. And forests and wetlands both play a very important role in that. Trees and roots play a very important role in sequestering carbon. And we're looking at what are the forestry practices that will have the greatest impact on sequestering carbon. And the wetlands, coastal wetlands and others, they play a very, very important role in sequestering carbon and methane. And so how do we make sure that they're managed in a way and protected so that the benefits to a healthy climate are realized?
So they also help with biodiversity, and at least along the shores, and correct me if I'm wrong, that those kinds of wetlands can be a buffer for those coastal areas with erosion and other filtering water that might not be clean. It helps with that filtration. I don't know how we can ignore this stuff anymore. So I'm really excited to learn about these activities of Scenic Hudson because they're of personal interest to me.
Well, thanks, Mary.
So, yeah. Not that you needed my endorsement.
We'll take it. We appreciate it.
Okay.
Can I just ask maybe a naive question? When you were talking about the regeneration and how putting basically back into the soil and that it's a more profitable way to farm, why isn't everyone doing that? All the farmers doing that? If it's not just better for the, let's just tick off the marks here. It's better for the environment. It's better for the soil. It's better for crops. It's more profitable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So why isn't everyone doing that?
Well, because farming has been practiced in traditional ways for generations,
Mm-hmm.
and the practices are passed down from one generation to another in many cases.
Right.
And farmers, I think, learn best from other farmers,
Yes.
whether it's parents or somebody else in their community. So what we're calling regenerative practices were actually practiced by indigenous people and by African American farmers, and those obviously have been interrupted. And big ag has come in, and pesticides and chemicals and other practices that are supported by agriculture industry. So what's needed now is both education and good scientific backing, demonstrating that all the benefits that I'm talking about are real.
Right.
And that's still a work in progress.
Mm-hmm.
So demonstrating that the science is there and that it's going to be more beneficial to both the environment and to the bottom line, that is all a work in progress. It's been demonstrated in many different contexts, but it has to be documented and shared in a way that the farmers can have the time to hear it, because
Right.
and they hear it from somebody that they trust. And so that is part of the challenge.
I see.
And that's why we've created this Northeast Carbon Alliance that includes many of the research farms in the Hudson Valley,
Mm-hmm.
and in New Jersey and Massachusetts, some of the leading scientific organizations in the world, like the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute and the Marine Biological Laboratory, the Carey Institute, as well as forest managers and wetland managers. So those are all among our partners, and
Mm-hmm.
where we can have that kind of open exchange, dialogue, bringing people who are on the cutting edge of actually implementing these approaches.
So I want to steer a little bit back to Moxie, and you seem like the David to the Goliaths. You and your team, you're going up against some big forces, whether it's government or companies. How do you keep believing that, or start believing that you can go up against people or organizations bigger than you, and through careful research, and as I think one of your founders said, care enough to take action, do your research so you don't have to backtrack from a position, and don't give up. So how do you keep convincing yourself of that? Have you ever had a loss that's kind of really knock the wind out of you, or how do you just keep that going?
Well, that's a great question, Mary. And that was, you're quoting Franny Reese, who's one of our founders and who led the organization through its seminal environmental battle of protecting Storm King Mountain from Con Edison, that wanted to build a power plant on the northern face of it. So Storm King is a beautiful mountain in the Hudson Highlands, and that they wanted to build a pump storage facility there. And our founders said that's a bad idea. They sued, and they spent 17 years
Oh, wow.
beating back the project and trying to make sure that it would never happen.
Wow.
But in the process, they won a very important legal decision called the Scenic Hudson decision in the law books. That established the principle that citizens have a voice in government decisions affecting the environment. They have standing, be in court, to be in a public hearing. So every time you and I stand up in a public hearing or write a letter saying we're in favor of something or opposed to some kind of major development that traces its origins and its legal basis back to the Scenic Hudson decision that Franny Reese helped to secure. So I think that is now part of the foundation and the tradition and the culture of Scenic Hudson.
Got it.
Right from the start, we were standing up to giants. And in the meantime, we've stood up to St. Lawrence Cement, a major international cement company. We've stood up to General Electric. We've stood up over and over again, and we're not worried by the fact that the company is large or has tremendous resources, because what we have is the power of the law, power of collaboration, and this going back to a question Mary asked. We know that together, Scenic Hudson with Riverkeeper and Clearwater and Natural Resources Defense Council and the Sierra Club and other organizations, and Scenic Hudson Land Trust with the Columbia Land Conservancy and Dutchess Land Conservancy and the Hudson Highlands Land Conservancy, we're all much more powerful together and can achieve so much more if we collaborate. And so we're committed to that collaboration. We're committed to the power of many. And, that power goes back to the citizens.
Right.
Scenic Hudson democratized the environmental movement. And so we all have to stand together and fight to ensure that any threats to our democracy and our democratic principles and institutions is countered. And that is part of Scenic Hudson's mission and Moxie.
Right. And it's in its DNA.
Yeah, it's in our DNA.
Outset.
It's in our DNA, and it's also very much motivating our work to ensure that when we think about the people of the Hudson Valley, we're thinking about all the people, that we are embracing the tremendous diversity that exists here in the Hudson Valley, people of all colors, people of all age, people of all ethnic background and race and gender. We're all in this together. And, so when you talk about what scares me the most, and that's climate change, well, we've all got to be in this together. We've all got to unite and do what we can to stand up to that great threat and to figure out what we can all do to address it together.
So just to wrap up the conversation, what advice would you give to a person who's trying to have their voice heard? What small steps could they take? Because you didn't get to where you were as a person or as a Scenic Hudson, as an organization, in just one giant leap. So what small steps could someone take to build their own Moxie, to self-advocate or advocate for something that they're curious or passionate about?
What I would say is, first, choose your cause, and choose your cause. Be thoughtful, identify something that really matters to you and your family and your community, and then step into the arena. Teddy Roosevelt said, it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man, or I would add the woman, who is actually in the arena. And that's what I believe. Get in the arena. You may err, you may come up short, because there is no undertaking without error or shortcoming. But get out there and strive valiantly and make it happen. And then look around. Who are your natural allies in the arena? Bring them together. And then, as Franny Reese, our founder, said, do your research, do your homework, so you don't have to get it right, get your facts right, so that you don't have to backtrack. And then don't give up. Don't give up. Never, 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 never give up.
Well, it sounds like you sure don't, or any of your team or your collaborators. So outstanding. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ned. One question, as maybe it's the best way to end it. If anyone would like to help, what would be the best way to help you and Scenic Hudson and the efforts, as well as your collaborators? What is someone, your average citizen, what can we do to help?
Well, thank you, Thorin. That's a great question. And probably the easiest thing is just to go to our website, which is, of course, scenichudson.org, and sign up, and which is easy to do. You just go to our website and you can sign up to get action alerts, follow the campaigns and the causes that we are pursuing, and look for the opportunities to get involved. There are going to be public hearings on Dan Scammer. There are gatherings on regenerative agriculture through the Northeast Carbon Alliance, and we have a website for the Northeast Carbon Alliance. So people can go to that website. It's northeastcarbonalliance.org, and learn about what's going on in all these realms and join us in the arena. People can
Exactly.
also help us financially by making contributions, and that's easily done through our website as well. We have to raise a significant budget every year, both to fight the battles that we're fighting, but also to buy the land and create the parks
Yes.
and preserve the working farms and to help them make the transition to regenerative practices that are going to help us all tackle climate change and the other threats to the valley and our region and planet.
Well, we'll have all that information in our show notes to go along with this podcast to make sure everyone can click right through.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. This has really been fun and interesting, and I appreciate both of you, Mary and Thorin, and what you're doing. And we're just total fans of Main Street Magazine.
And now Main Street Moxie.
Main Street Moxie, right? And you wrote a beautiful.
Ned, this has been so much fun. It's been nice to see you, even though it's through a computer, and talk about these efforts. And I know we only scratched the surface, but I hope that our listeners, get a glimpse into Scenic Hudson and you and all your efforts that you've worked your career and your life for. And I hope that, they get inspired to help make a difference.
Thank you, Thorin. Thank you, Mary. Pleasure to meet you. And this has been really, really fun. Thank you.
So Mary, Ned's interview is very interesting. There's so many parts to it. And some of these are like super heavy topics.
I don't know how he crams so much into his career, from ranging from the private sector and banking to government roles to now leading and growing Scenic Hudson and taking on the powers that be. It's incredible.
Well, I just like his work in Boston, cleaning up Boston Harbor. I mean, to me, I'm just like, my mind is blown because where do you start?
And I wonder if he found any tea.
Jesus.
All right, I had to say that.
All right. But with Ned, my biggest takeaway was his Alaskan adventure story, because to me it symbolizes so much of what Ned is about. His love of the environment, working with the environment, but working as a team and pivoting and not being afraid that when something happens, you have to adjust.
Yes. Yeah, that was a compelling story. And the part of that I really enjoyed and something that I've learned over time is the power of nature as a teacher.
For sure.
And Ned seemed like he really learned, as he said, he carried lessons from that trip through his life. And I think it fuels the passion that he has for the environment and the passion his team at Scenic Hudson have. And then being able to bring so many diverse players to the table, working in communities and making sure that community members have a say in the improvements or the work that's going on in their communities. I think that is real collaboration.
Just the inclusivity portion, that's a word for you, portion of his work and just work ethos and mentality, was really eye-opening. And I hope that our listeners feel that, besides the messaging, obviously, and the importance of the environment, that every one of us can make a difference and there's a way to help. And we should all be thinking of the environment in a different way and how we can improve it. So I think for me, the biggest takeaway, the environment is something I've always been passionate about, but hearing Ned say that that's his biggest worry. And he wakes up every day working to better the environment, to try to help it. And I think we should too. So I think we should all take that lesson away from this, hopefully.
And I think hopeful is a good word, because I think without hope, Ned wouldn't be able to do the work that he does, nor would his team or the people he collaborates with. So I found that to be inspirational, that he keeps getting back there every day along with his coworkers to make things happen.
Yeah. And I hope our listeners, want to do something. So in that case, head to our show notes. You can find all the links there that we talked about in this episode to Scenic Hudson and the other organizations. And we hope that, we're going to try to do our part, and we hope you will too.
Amen.
This episode is sponsored by Northeast Ford and Catskill View Weddings.